Hello, I'm Martin Park. For those that don't know me, I'm a naturopath and a master coach and trainer who has been working professionally in health, fitness, wellness, and personal development for over 46 years. If you are someone who is interested in learning how to maximize your overall health, well-being, and performance, then welcome. Over the next few episodes, I will be diving deep into the art of achieving your goals, no matter what they may be. We'll cover my personal strategies, uncover common pitfalls, and explore the challenges that might trip you up along the way. So whether you're chasing a big dream, attempting to get your health and well-being in order, or just trying to level up in your life, I will be giving you the tools you will need to keep moving forward. And today, I'm going to talk about something I've witnessed countless times throughout my career, a phenomenon so common yet so frustrating that it deserves our full attention. I call it the rebound trap. In relation to losing weight and keeping it off, you know the story. Someone decides they've had enough of being overweight. They commit to a program, they follow it diligently, they sacrifice, they push through the discomfort, and they succeed. They lose the weight, sometimes a substantial amount. They feel incredible, their health markers improve, people notice and compliment them, they've done it. And then, slowly but surely, the weight starts to come back, bit by bit, pound by pound, kilo by kilo. The old habits creep back in, the vigilance fades, societal, family, and other stresses rear their demanding heads, and within a year or two, or often much less, they're right back where they started, and often even heavier than before. The statistics are sobering. 89% of people who successfully transform their bodies through diet and exercise will find themselves back at square one before too long. And while today's podcast is going to be primarily focused on weight loss, this isn't just about weight loss, as the rebound trap exists across virtually every domain of human achievement. Whether it's fitness, business, relationships, or personal development, we are all vulnerable to this pattern of achievement followed by regression. The entrepreneurs who build successful companies and businesses only to watch them slowly deteriorate after the initial fire burns out due to neglecting the daily systems that fueled their success. The couples who work through relationship challenges only to slide back into old patterns once the new honeymoon period has faded. The students who achieve academic excellence only to fall into procrastination and minimum effort once their student days are over and the reality of the real world kicks in. In every case, the pattern is similar. The very focus and intensity that drives achievement is difficult to sustain indefinitely. We climb the mountain, plant our flag, and then somehow find ourselves back at the bottom, wondering what happened. The question, why? Why do we humans seem almost programmed to surrender our hard-won victories? What invisible forces pull us back to where we started even after we've achieved hard-earned success? Let's begin with what I believe is the fundamental misconception at the heart of the rebound trap. The idea that reaching a goal is the end of the journey. When someone embarks on a weight loss journey, they typically envision a finish line. I just need to lose X amount of weight. I just need to fit into that dress. I just need to get my blood pressure down. These are all worthy goals, but the language reveals the problem. The word just. During the active phase of weight loss, most people operate under a mindset of temporary sacrifice. I just need to get through these next few weeks, months, or whatever the time frame, then I can get back to normal. They tell themselves I can do anything for a while if I know there's an end to it. And while this framing potentially makes the process more tolerable in the short term, it virtually guarantees that the changes won't stick. Because let's be honest, if your healthy eating plan feels like punishment, if your exercise routine feels like torture, if your entire approach to health, well-being, and weight control feels like a burden you can't wait to shed, then of course you'll abandon it as soon as you feel you've earned the right to do so. In a previous podcast on willpower, self-control, and discipline, I talked about how truly successful people focus on identity before actions. They don't just try to exercise more or eat healthy. They begin to see themselves as someone who prioritizes physical health. This identity-based approach makes consistent action more natural and resistance less frequent. This insight is critical to understanding the rebound trap. You see, most people who embark on a weight loss journey continue to identify as someone who struggles with their weight, or someone who has to diet, or even someone who is out of control as they love food too much. They see themselves as inherently flawed individuals who are temporarily overriding their true nature to achieve a goal. And so even as they're losing weight, even as they're doing all the right things, this underlying identity remains unchanged. They're still, in their mind, the same person who gained the weight in the first place. They're just behaving differently for now. This is why when they reach their goal and the external motivation fades, they revert to the behaviors that align with their underlying identity. Put simply, we act in ways that are consistent with who we believe we are. Consider two individuals, both of whom have lost significant weight. The first says, "I'm so glad that diet is over. Now I can finally enjoy myself again." The second says, "I actually enjoy the way I feel when I eat nutritious foods and move my body regularly. This is far superior to my old way of living." The first person still identifies as someone who naturally prefers unhealthy foods and sedentary living, but who through willpower, self-control and discipline temporarily overcame those preferences to achieve a goal and is now free to do whatever they wish. The second has undergone an identity shift. They now see themselves as someone who genuinely values and enjoys healthy living. Guess which one is more likely to maintain their weight loss? At its core, the rebound trap is not just a problem of behavior, it's a crisis of identity. It happens when we change our habits, but deep down still see ourselves as the old version. So over time, we either return to our old habits to match our old identity, or we update how we see and believe in ourselves to support the new way of living. This is part of the reason why so many people who lose weight often regain that weight, as they have only momentarily changed their behaviors to achieve their goal without giving any thought or effort into changing their identity. Put simply, they've temporarily modified what they do without addressing who they believe they are. And this brings me to the second critical aspect of the rebound trap, the fixation on outcomes rather than processes. When weight loss is your sole focus, you're oriented toward an outcome. Once that outcome is achieved, the natural response is to stop the process that got you there. In other words, once the thrill of the goal fades, many lose their why. But health and well-being isn't a destination, it's a lifestyle. It's not something you achieve once and for all, it's something you cultivate daily. Those who successfully avoid the rebound trap understand this. They shift their focus from outcomes to processes. They learn to value and enjoy the daily practices that support their health, nutritious eating, regular movement, adequate rest, stress management, etc., rather than seeing these practices merely as a means to an end. They don't exercise to burn calories. They exercise because it makes them feel strong and energetic. They don't eat healthy food as penance for their dietary sins. They eat them because they appreciate how these foods nourish their bodies and contribute to their overall well-being. When you identify as someone who values health for its own sake, the daily practices that support health become expressions of your identity rather than impositions on your freedom. They become who you are, not what you force yourself to do. Let me share an observation from my decades of working with clients. The people who maintain their weight loss over long term are invariably those who find genuine enjoyment in healthy living. They're not white-knuckling their way through deprivation. They've discovered forms of movement that bring them joy, ways of eating that satisfy both their nutritional needs and their taste buds, and patterns of living that energize rather than deplete them. They adhere to core principles rather than rigid rules, allowing them to navigate life's complexities while staying on track. They've escaped the rebound trap not by exerting perpetual willpower, but by changing the game entirely. They're no longer fighting against their natural inclinations. They've cultivated new natural inclinations. And this, I believe, is the key to avoiding the rebound trap. Not to force yourself to maintain behaviors that feel unnatural or burdensome, but to gradually, patiently cultivate a new nature, a new identity for whom healthy behaviors feel authentic and satisfying. To make it less about resistance and more about alignment, less about deprivation and more about choice, less about what you're giving up and more about what you're gaining. The rebound trap is real and it's powerful, but it's not inevitable. By understanding its mechanics, you can navigate around it. And in doing so, you can create not just a temporary change in your weight, but a lasting transformation in your relationship with your body, with food, with movement, and ultimately with yourself. This is how we stop rebounding, not by holding on tighter in fear, but by becoming someone who no longer needs to, as they are no longer afraid. Next week, I will continue our exploration of ways to improve your chances of success in all your endeavors. Until then, I thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate your company. I look forward to spending some time with you again. Bye for now.